the lady raising her basket, and I'm very fond of it. It will be beautiful. We have very little time. Some people have to leave. We can extend ourselves a little bit further. Those of us who can stay a few more minutes, that should be no problem. But this would be a good moment then if everyone could turn their cameras on, because we have been limiting this just to the 2 or 3 people who have been talking. Now is a good moment to see that there have been around 30 people stable throughout the whole day. And this is the real conversation. I find it very fortunate that we finish with that image, no, that shows that every conversation is like a matrushka doll, no, with a conversation within a conversation within a conversation within a conversation.
Exactly.
Some things get lost in translation, as has already been mentioned in some cases, especially from our Albanian colleagues. Some things, as you mentioned, are untranslatable, as this collective melancholy. The Portuguese might talk about saudade, for example, also similar term that usually is referred to as untranslatable. And in general, we have seen that every city has many cities within it, because every human being is basically many human beings in terms of all the different levels of understanding, appropriation, and integration that we achieve. With those things said, and well, there's of course a host of topics that we could talk about. Would someone be brave enough to step first into the dance floor and try to tell us how this came through? These also very different conversations. Some more planned, sketched, some more formal, some more based on individual presentations with a response. So we see different modalities here. I would like to open the floor for some conversation, some 10, 15 minutes, I think won't kill anyone. Please. Everybody is shy today.
Okay, so if we have a few minutes, maybe I should like to say that maybe we could make a reference to the previous talk by Fatma Tanış, talking about Güzel İzmir.
Yeah.
Beautiful seminar, and then in which, you know, there is a word, emotions can only be go to the hearts, not the information. So here in our case, in Istanbul narratives and narrations, yes, not only the information about Istanbul, but the emotions are just carried through the hearts of the participants of this ongoing, lingering dialogue. Even Sonia and I, we felt that we have a conversation with Gautier or Flaubert or Baudelaire or Tanpınar Rasim, and we created an epigraph. So how these emotions and these cities are residing in our dialogues. And I like that word very much, and such, you know, the city as a carrier of the emotions, and we are sad for the emotions lost in the in such, you know, distracted landscape of the city. But we have a possibility to reinstate, to restore, to reconstruct all these emotions back through our narrations and conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot
for your nice presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot also for your reflection, and I really enjoyed your presentation and all these dialogues. Actually, yeah, subconsciously perhaps, but I think also these narratives are pulling you to go in a certain direction. It's like the city, how it navigates you. You are also navigated by these stories, because I reproduce in my PhD, some spoiler alert about my PhD at the moment, but I wrote 3 narratives, and 2 of them are historical narratives. So I'm writing the 19th century Izmir, or long 19th century, early 20th as well. I reproduced these narratives based on the exact narratives written by the travelers and all these novelists, writers, etc. So they are reproduced from the real narratives, and this is why I'm really looking forward to Porto exhibition. I really want to go there to underline all these phrases and the depictions, the words that have been used to sketch or the paint Izmir as a beautiful. What was that? I want to really show that. And there I think I'm also having a sort of dialogue. I recognize, thanks to you and Sonia right now, with the writers of the Orientalist writers.
Travelers are also fiction producers, and travelers are novelists. And if the more they can be as imaginative as a novelist, they can be, how can I say, they can carry all these emotions.
Yes,
maybe as a so I think we should do the same thing. I should do the same thing, for example, for Trabzon, and maybe Jorge for Lisbon and for other cities as well. Yes, we should keep and preserve all these narrations about the cities. Only through these narratives the cities can keep alive.
We're going to try to do some of that, I believe, in this second part. Klaske raised her hand.
Yes, just reflecting on the whole webinar or the whole series of talks today. What I think it did beautifully is to in some kind of way confirm this potential of the narrative or the literary devices as vehicle for communication, for empathy, for understanding place, not only in spatial and material terms, but also in time, and thereby being inherently social. And it was nice that Karima in her lecture actually reminded us of the 2 points of departure of this this whole action. On the one hand, this urge to understand how people relate to their environment and how we can respond to that responsibly, and recognizing literary devices as a kind of vehicle to do so. So if I look back at the talks, there were 3 presentations that placed the novel central as a kind of a vehicle or device. There was, of course, the conversation about Pamuk, the presentation of Stefan Čapaliku on Albania and the city of Šoda. And of course, Sernas and Tadea's conversation about Elena Ferrante's take on Naples and whether that is a particularly gendered representation of the city, or how it brings about a discussion on gender. Then there was a couple of presentations that were really about stories, or how we write stories and what could be the effect of that. So there was, of course, Fatma's presentation on how you developed your own narratives and how you use writing to communicate and bring that back to Izmir to make a certain argument. But I think also in the conversation between Anna and James about Narrative 4, where actually the initiative of the Narrative 4 organization helps to bring young people more in contact with their city, their environment, their community through writing and through stories. And then the last, perhaps narrating devices, actually the speech and the talking in the presentations of Jane McAllister on actually doing the interview, speaking with local people and finding ways to represent that also visually. And then the Ljubljana activities with inhabitants and how can we hear what they have to say and communicate with inhabitants. So on the level of the novels, of the stories and the writing as a technique, and of the talking, I think in all these discussions, this role of the narrative was was seen from different lights. So I want to thank you for all that. It was very inspiring.
It was a very important, say, the variety, the multiplicity of options. I would like to point out also that something that appeared to me to be very interesting, and it's a balance to be achieved. I'm specifically referring to Sernas and Tadea's conversation, because it appeared to me that in some of the other conversations, it became evident that the diversity, the multiplicity, the proliferation of actors involved in conversation by far supersede the distinction between a split, in this case, a split between a perception of space between men and women. So for me, it's very interesting to see how we can ensure that the built environment, the city, is meaningful to each and every single one of its inhabitants, without having to say, well, we divide ourselves in groups and we have some kind of antagonistic position between these groups because we perceive that one group is homogeneous enough to characterize it as a particular actor in the city. I don't know what you think about this, but from the other presentations, I gathered a much more nuanced and a much more proliferative interpretation than like a split. I would like to hear from you about that. Cernaz, maybe I'm addressing your presentation. So is it possible to say there is like this line that marks, there is an absolutely radical distinction, and you can identify two groups of the population as a basic understanding of the city?
Well, actually, it's very much related to how we, in the first place, conceptualize the space. So space is actually, as I said in my presentation, it's a social contract, and it's very much loaded with different, let's say, layered power relations. So it's not a clear distinction between only men and women, but also who are like able-bodied or disabled-bodied or young and old. So like the way each and every individual experiences the urban environment is very much different. And when I was listening to Fatma and Mustafa's conversation about emotions, like the way we experience our like immediate urban spaces as different individuals with different, let's say, capabilities is actually correspond to how we feel, how we generate emotions regarding our urban spaces. And if we're going to engage in a, let's say, more thorough, more comprehensive dialogue, including all the actors, as Fatma has written in the chat box earlier today, like how can we bring different actors together and make, let's say, make everyone understand like what kind of emotions we attribute with our urban spaces, or how do we experience our urban spaces. I think it's really important to make these emotions to be understood. And like I specifically today I talked about the distinction between men and women because like when we look around, like it's something global, it's something universal. So like we can look around all the feminist marches which have been organized, like the feminist night march in Istanbul, or Take Back the Night marches in Stockholm, or the Slut Walk in Toronto. So like there is this strong claim of women regarding the urban spaces, but this is just an example. So like women are just an, let's say, representative group. As I said, it could be the disabled, it could be the LGBTI plus community, it could be, let's say, the children, or the senior citizens, especially when I think about this COVID pandemic and how the restrictions on the senior citizens have been imposed, especially in Turkey, like, because on the TV, on the media, we have been hearing this, like, for those who are above 65, like, old people should stay at home. Old people should, let's say, watch out their involvement in public spaces. So, like, I think this was also very discriminative in terms of appropriation and integration into the urban public places. So I think this distinction does not only refer to gender, but gender is a very good objective through which we can see these differences regarding participation and integration. And it's very much, as I said, related to how we feel about our urban spaces.
You are muted, Jorge. Sorry.
Very much. Well, great to know. It's just an example, but very important also to see how we can, let's say, circulate from the understanding of differences, not as a source of division, but then looking at the divisions as potential for integration, for looking for common grounds, no? Instead of just leaving it at the diagnosis of what you call power imbalances or something. Well, that's something most probably we will have the opportunity to discuss. Are there any other comments, questions? Is that it? Okay, well, if that's it, thank you all very much. For those of you who know people who couldn't join, please make them aware that the recordings will be available soon on our webpage. We're working relatively well with the YouTube channel. And well, it has been really a privilege listening to all of you in this conversation, which what strikes me as more beautiful is that you start seeing that they cross-pollinate these conversations, and the one who started talking first ends up talking with the one who finished talking last, and new connections are built. With this said, I invite you once more to constantly consult both our bibliography, to feed it, of course, to feed the bibliography with your work. Please share your output because it is interesting to others and it might be useful to others. So send us all the time, whenever you want, whenever you have a new product, send us your outcome and we will, your output, I'm sorry, and I will try to put it in the bibliography. And please check that constantly, as well as the team page where everybody has their biographies, and you can see people who I'm 100% sure are very interesting to talk to by each of us, depending on what we're doing. No? So we really, this idea of network in our case is real, absolutely real. No? We want to be this big conversation. And I think this last slide that was shown by Mustafa and Sonia illustrates very well some of the spirit. No? We're talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And on the way, this adds up, this builds up into something which I believe we can agree is very beautiful. Thank you all very much. And we hope to see you well, soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks. Before we close, thank you, Jorge and Working Group 1 for organizing this. I think it marks an important moment in the in our action. Of course, now we had the 4 webinars, and this last one is indeed not only about how about what we do, but also how we talk about it and communicate. So I think this brings some important reflections also for us to think what could be the next activities, the next steps also towards the next few years. We will keep you posted. There's not a new webinar planned, but we hope to have the training school actually on site in Tallinn in September, 15th to 17th of September. Hopefully in real, otherwise in a hybrid format. And of course the midterm conference that we have unfortunately had to keep on postponing, but we really think now that in autumn we will have good opportunities to make that happen. So we will keep you posted. So indeed, please keep checking the website and the mail for news on new activities. Thank you, Jorge, and everyone for participating.